Hey everyone, welcome to this session of the Growth at Home series where we'll be discussing the evolution of cannabis distribution amidst the global pandemic. My name is Ning. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nabis. We are one of the largest distribution companies in the cannabis industry, currently shipping over $250 million worth of cannabis products to retailers across the state of California. With me today is Steph Beck, Director of Sales at Beezle. She's helped build the brand from scratch back in 2014 to where it is today. Thank you all for being here. It's an incredible time to be in the cannabis industry. Welcome, Steph. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the story of who you are and how you got into the cannabis industry?
Yeah, really the answer to that question, the short answer is a leap of faith, which I think is how a lot of us got involved in it, especially back in the Prop 215 days. Mm-hmm. But my mother grew up in Northern California in like the 60s and 70s. And so she was like definitely kind of a part of like the hippie movement. And then I grew up in Georgia, obviously a much more conservative place. But she always kind of instilled this ideology in me that like weed, like the fact that weed is illegal just like doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And I was never like a huge stoner, but I had a ton of friends who smoked weed all the time. You know, like people all across America are smoking weed all the time. Right. And I just remember thinking like, this is not a big deal. Yeah. And I went to school for food science and technology, not at all related to cannabis. Mm-hmm. And then when I graduated from college, I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. And I ended up meeting Dorian Schreiner, who's the founder of Beezle, at an LA High Times Cup that a friend of mine had invited me to. And we got to talking, and he was like making concentrates at the time and wanted to get involved in making edibles. So with my food science background and like with this being like an emerging cool industry, I was like, okay, let's do it. So I moved to California.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was like a wild ride. At the time, it was just Dorian and I.
Yeah.
Wow. And he just had like a closed loop system, and we started making. A lot of people don't know this, but we used to run an edibles company as well. So
I was going to ask. Yeah, that's not what you do today at all.
No. Yeah. So I started off making ice cream for Beezle. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Ice cream and other edibles. It was a really big hit at like all the High Times Cups, mm-hmm. Chalice, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, it can't believe how much time has passed and how much has changed. But now we couldn't do the edibles thing anymore because the new restrictions, like you can't have based products, you can't have foods that aren't shelf stable at room temperature. So I slowly kind of transitioned more into selling for Beezle. And so I was hitting the road a lot, going to as many dispensaries as I could. At the time, mm-hmm. I was distribution.
Wow.
So I would literally show up to a dispensary with a safe kind of on wheels.
Okay.
And it would have concentrates in it. And I would sell them right there. And they would give me the money. Yeah.
Oh, so, was it one of those like Pelican boxes that you could drag around? Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I started passing off territories to other reps that we were hiring, started managing that team. And here we are today.
Wow. That's a really interesting story. I think we all sort of just stumble into the cannabis industry through some friend of ours that kind of gets us slightly involved, and then it's one step and then another, and it's just a slippery slope. And here we all are dedicating our lives to this thing. Yeah. And I mean, it's honestly been one of the greatest twists of my life as well. And, you know, I think I've shared the same sort of values as you do growing up. You know, I've always loved weed, and, you know, I grew up on the East Coast, and it was never, I think, you know, coming from like Asian conservative family, they definitely don't like this sort of stuff. But, you know, at the same time, like I grew up in an American culture where this stuff was totally the norm. And I came to California and worked in tech, and that was a close corollary geographically to cannabis. And when it all legalized, I was like, I have to check this thing out. It was too good to be true to happen in my lifetime. So yeah, interesting. And so, now fast forward about, 6 years, you're the director of sales of Beezle. And what's Beezle's story in terms of like the products you mentioned before? You guys produced edibles, you stopped producing edibles because of obviously the regulatory constraints. What sort of products do you guys produce now? And you guys have a very unique processing methodology for extracts. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, of course. So Dorian, who I mentioned, he grew up in Northern California, was always like really a cannabis connoisseur first, and went to UC Santa Cruz, studied organic agriculture, ran a couple grows, so learned a lot about cannabis that way, and then started working at a dispensary in Hopland. And this was around like 2012. And that was really when you first started to see concentrates come onto the market at all.
Yeah.
And so he was working at a place that actually had a dab bar, one of the first dab bars.
Wow.
And so he was kind of like got into dabbing himself, and then was like seeing all these people come in selling their concentrates, and was like, I could take a whack at this.
Yeah.
So he got a closed loop system, started making concentrates, and dabbable concentrates to this day is always what we've been most well known for.
Gotcha.
And in particular, live resin concentrates.
Gotcha. And do you plan on expanding back out into edibles at all, or you're just sticking with your lane, knowing that you're the best at it?
We talk about it every once in a while. We're doing like some build outs up at our facility, and we've talked about putting like at least a small test kitchen in there to be able to do small batch stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah. Cool.
I keep the dream alive. Every once in a while, one of our reps will go, Steph, somebody just told me they really, really missed the ice cream. And it always warms my heart.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. One day we'll bring it back. And now that with the company being so large, like how many people do you guys employ? How big is the team? How many stores are you guys in? What's the general footprint?
Yeah, the team is about like 35 of us now.
Yeah. Wow.
So we have grown a fair amount, which has been really, really cool to see. Also, like the physical footprint, like the facility that we started in is still the facility that we operate out of, up in Cloverdale, but we've expanded into like 6 units more of the facility. So we're always joking about how eventually we'll just take over the whole.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like that's how it always starts. It's the same thing with us. We started in this tiny little, like 500 square foot little closet. And then, we just took over like 3 or 4 different businesses next door and broke down the walls. And that's how we have our first, had our first distribution center. Really interesting, because you just don't know what you just don't know what you need, at the time, and you just kind of start off small, and then the industry just kind of blew up, and so sales just kept growing and volume kept growing. And so, we back in 2018 we started working together. How did you find us? What was like your first impression or memory of Nabis or anyone on the team?
Yeah. So Demetrius originally connected us with you guys.
Yeah.
And Dorian had a relationship with him from the industry, from like long standing back in like the Prop 215 days.
Yeah.
So there was automatically already like this level of trust. But I just remember really going in there for the first time and being like, wow, these people seem organized and competent, but also like friendly and energetic.
Yeah,
which was a nice turn of events for me based on what I had experienced previously trying to find a good distribution partner.
Yeah, wow, that makes sense. I'm always curious about that because we kind of, transparently being sort of self-aware about ourselves coming from the tech industry, we were like, do you think we will mesh well with the cannabis industry? And, we sort of tried to bring a lot of our personality into this company to mask the the techie vibe a little bit, but at the same time, we still have like both legs of the company, and we know like a lot of the value of what we offer is going to come from the tech and the data, so you can't lose it.
And that was the whole value proposition for us, because that was what a lot of people were missing. And so while yes, there's sometimes these like clashes between different parts of the industry, like it really did fill a void.
Yeah, that's great. And so, before using us as distribution, you mentioned that you used to be basically the distribution for Beezle. How was that experience? Like, do you have any close calls or?
Oh yeah, it was dangerous. I mean, looking back on it, I'm like, what was he doing?
Right.
And I would be as cautious as I could. But I was really happy to see the transition to third-party distribution and like sort of all of the regulations that came with recreational legalization in 2018. And then we worked with two, and I won't name names here, but we worked with two other distributors after that. And one of them was sort of like too small to handle the capacity that we needed. And so we were ending up having to do a lot of the work ourselves. And then the other was the opposite. It was like sort of too big. And so we didn't feel like we had that like true partnership. We felt kind of just like another brand. Another brand.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And since working with third-party distribution, how has your internal like organizational structure or operational structure, sales strategies changed since transitioning over?
Yeah, I mean, everything really has changed, but I think the biggest change specifically with the switch over to you guys was that we started to have an opportunity to have strategy at all. Because leading up to that, it was a lot of like, what's the headache today? What's the problem we have to solve today? So we couldn't really focus on like our core competencies. So having, being able to rely upon consistent delivery, fast delivery, really just like allowed us to focus on what we're good at and ultimately grow. We had that extra level of trust from our dispensary partners.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, we've heard, delivery seems like it's like a easier thing. You just deliver something from point A to point B. But I guess in the cannabis industry, with all the compliance rules and regs, and retailers being a bit finicky when it comes to like the specific preference of how they like to receive deliveries, is oftentimes creates rejections in orders and a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. So that's we've tried to make sure to treat everyone like a good partner. And I'm glad to hear that it's working out. And so, let's talk about the pandemic. Since March, when the pandemic hit, I've noticed your guys' sales have skyrocketed. What do you think were the main causing factors of it? Was it just the fact that the industry was essential, or what changed within your guys' team that made that a reality?
Yeah. Well, we got really lucky. We thought, of course, like everybody else, that we weren't going to be deemed essential and sales were going to drop to zero.
Yeah.
And then once we were deemed essential, we saw that big panic buying episode. And so that definitely contributed to a large increase in sales right at the beginning. And then, from there was like just a lot of volatility, especially with like the social unrest and some of the looting that happened. And so it was kind of, it has been since the pandemic, just a roller coaster. And we just did our best to adapt. We really, at the lab, we split the shifts so that we would have more room for social distancing.
Totally.
we have a great compliance officer who like put in a bunch of protocols specifically related to COVID. And then for my team, we can't be in front of people anymore, or at least we couldn't for a period of time, or do like in-person demos or things like that. So we had to get really creative, focus on how do you educate bud tenders without being able to be face-to-face? How do you run promotions? These kinds of things.
What are some of those changes that you guys made with promotions and in-person demos that you can't do anymore?
Yeah, a lot of people are running ghost demos. So we'll set up some promo and they'll advertise it, and it's basically just the deal. And then we've shifted a lot of the education stuff online. And then in terms of promotion, same thing, running like deals where if you buy Beezle products, you have an opportunity to win a Puffco, but you have to email us a picture of your receipt from a certain time frame.
A lot of creative stuff. And do you feel it's harder to get into new stores now, like that you can't just go build a relationship in person, or is it still like just as good as it was before in terms of, new accounts being opened?
Now it's a little bit easier again to get new business. But at the beginning of the pandemic, certainly we were seeing larger orders from our existing customer base, but not a lot of new orders.
Yeah, people just weren't like down to try new things. They were just down to double down on what they knew. Yeah, exactly. And so in that way, I'm really, really grateful for the relationships that we already had with buyers, because some of which were like years in the making. Because I think if we had been trying to start a brand, at the beginning of this year, we would have been in a really, really hard place. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Any new products or SKUs come out during this time that you're seeing? We did. We released a THCA line. Okay, cool. Yeah. So just like, pretty much as high potency as you can get in a dabbable concentrate. Oh, that's awesome. Are those selling well? They are. Wow. Actually, a lot of our stuff is selling too well. Okay. And so it's been hard with all the volatility to like appropriately plan for production. Yeah. Because especially with like the market overall having that big increase in sales right at the beginning of the pandemic. Now we're seeing right ahead of Croptober, it's really hard to source material. Yeah. I heard the price of flower is now skyrocketed, and and then it should come back down, I suppose, when harvest season happens. But for the time being, we've seen a lot of volatility in the market as well. Like we handle distribution for a lot of flower brands, and their volume has like shifted tremendously. A lot of them focus on doing just straight up bulk business because it's it's just more lucrative at this time. But that's interesting. And so are you guys have you guys been, on the flip side, adversely affected at all by the pandemic in any way? I mean, obviously not being able to be with the team as much is difficult. I handle like morale events. It's hard. It's really, I think about like staying in close communication with people, and then also just giving people grace kind of where they need it, because everybody that I talk to has their own story of something not so great that's happened in their own personal life. And so I think just like, again, same thing with the retailers. It's just about asking people if they need help and like having honest conversations with people. Yeah, that makes sense. And another sort of like issue that we've seen across the industry as a trend is that, cash flow has been sort of a big burning question on people's minds when it comes to, paying off invoices for sales. How has that changed for you guys? Do you guys now offer, more net terms, less because you wanted to just tighten things back, or, what's your viewpoint on that? Yeah, so cash flow
I mean, even before the pandemic was kind of a nightmare for us.
Right.
And we have done a fair amount of tightening up terms with people just because the cash flow is so hugely important to us.
Yeah.
We basically, because we don't have our own grow, we're not vertically integrated in that way. We're reliant on this network of growers that we have to source material from.
Yeah.
And sometimes from the period where we source material to the time that the goods are sold and we've received money can be up to like 6 months.
Yeah. No, it's pretty bad. Yeah. And
then
it
on
got
top
worse.
of that,
Yeah.
you have like these retailers who are also like experiencing a lot of changes. So like, for example, like somebody who got looted,
right.
And like might need some extra time to pay off their invoice. Like we definitely want to help those people out where we can. It just makes it tricky not knowing exactly how much money is going to come in every week.
Everything from seed to sale has to work perfectly for everyone's business to, just run and operate normally. And like when one part of the chain breaks, like it creates this whole like cascading effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so interesting. And so, like Nabis has built a bunch of like using our data, built a bunch of creditworthiness scores and trustworthiness ratings for retailers. Has that helped you guys at all with, your sales process? And we also launched Nabis Capital recently too, which you guys use a lot. I've been working with Michael too, a lot on that side of things, and Rory. They're awesome, by the way. I guess, has that, helped your business at all from just creating more predictable cash flow?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are invaluable tools to them. Rory, has done a really good job on her own of trying to, have ways that we can vet new customers, to make decisions about, what terms we want to extend to them.
Yeah.
But having tools like that where we can see their credit worthiness across the brands that you guys work with.
Yeah.
Without that information, we're really it's not much better than a guess.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's a new store, it's you just have no information about it. You might hit up a friend who's sold to them before, but that's it. Interesting. And so, I guess from that perspective, what other tools would you like to see and have at your fingertips that you currently don't have?
For me personally, the market data aspect, there's all these companies who are selling data, but it's all kind of incomplete.
Yeah.
Or extrapolated. If I could know by product category how much product of certain price points is being sold in certain regions, and feel confident about the data, that would be good.
That'd be key. Yeah, no, it's interesting. We have data, but then it's only pertinent to our brands, and then we have. As we get larger, I suppose that'll get better. But then you have POS and retail data, but that's dependent also on how many stores they're in. And so you kind of have to create this you have to meld them all together to get the full picture, but then it overlaps. So, you don't know exactly what the true data is. What do you think about, services like BDS then that try to create that, perfect sample of the market?
I look at them.
Yeah. And then do you think it's actually worth it?
I think it's better than nothing, you just have to kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. So it's more directional than it is actual, real data.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so, broadening out the scope, what do you see moving forward from here through the end of the year and next year as the biggest problems for the cannabis industry? Is it, sales, tax, collections, enforcement? What do you see?
Yeah. The tax, obviously, if we could get the tax covered, I think that would help
get behind that one. Yeah.
Especially since, the black market, I think probably is thriving through the pandemic. And I think lowering the tax would bring a lot of those consumers back into the stores.
Yeah.
Other than that, banking, obviously.
Yeah.
Having the ability to
use normal financial services.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we were talking about with like Nabis Capital. Like that has helped us out so much because it gives us control and flexibility that we don't otherwise have, because there are people, like if we're ordering packaging, for example, those people have real terms and strict terms. Yeah. And we don't necessarily have that for cannabis businesses yet in California. And so if somebody commits to terms and then overextends, we can't go to our packaging provider and say, well, we didn't get paid, so we can't pay you.
Not their problem.
Yeah. So the Nabis Capital thing has really, really, really helped us to be able to have that flexibility.
Awesome. Yeah. And I imagine you guys can probably, if having that predictable cash flow in larger swaths, you could probably get lower rates with the raw material too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're buying in bigger bulk. Yeah. Okay.
Which helps us with growth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you guys started to produce like larger and larger batches now that, you're getting more raw material in at the door at a time now?
We're getting there. So like I said, with Croptober being here and everything, and it having been hard to source material for a while, I think in the remainder of the year, we'll really see our production capacities go up to higher levels than probably they've ever been.
Cool. So I guess Croptober is kind of the big inflection point for everyone to see how the industry grows, and it's going to go feed right into the holidays, which will be pretty exciting.
Yeah. Now what we need to do is just all cross our fingers that none of these fires
burn down the crop.
Exactly. Or create like what they call campfire kush, because you can't, if there's too much smoke, that smell and taste you just can't get out of cannabis. Yeah.
And then it'll just drive up the price of indoor like crazy. Yeah, no, that'll be.
We joke about that, about how we would have to start sourcing weed from LA.
Oh my gosh.
Historically, we've never done, because we're in Cloverdale, which is like right on the cusp of the Emerald Triangle.
Right. Yeah, no, that's interesting. And you guys started in NorCal mostly, right? And then moved into SoCal over time. And, fast forward the next 5-10 years, like how do you see the federal opportunity and sort of like interstate expansion opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some stuff that we're working on in various different states.
Yeah.
It's hard to say what will happen, but I mean, I'd love to eventually see Beezle in all 50 states.
Yeah.
I think that you can't put the cat back in the bag.
Right.
On this. There's too much tax revenue, and there's too many jobs being created. And there's just all these examples of how, like the sky didn't fall when people started smoking legal weed.
Right.
So I think especially now with COVID, like states are going to need to get tax revenue from
somewhere.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping that we'll see the path to federal legalization speed up.
Yeah. Does that affect your business at all? Like if I guess there's like a spectrum, from here until federal legalization, there's also, decriminalization as well. And just overall, like more states, at what stages does it affect your business the most in a positive or negative way?
I guess that will all depend on where we're at as a business when it occurs.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because you're going to have all these puzzle pieces that you have to figure out how to put together, because all these states have their own sets of rules, of regulations.
And then if it federally legalizes, you have like a lot of other big players from other industries coming in.
And probably you'll see a lot of consolidation.
Right.
But it's challenging because for that same reason, it's like, okay, so if we get involved in all these other states and we're abiding by all of their specific state regulations,
right?
And then you'll have this big upending of everything when it
Yeah.
goes federally legal. I think that will be probably the most interesting next thing to happen in the industry.
Yeah. And this is a question, I guess, that doesn't really have a definitive answer, but I always like to ask it. But what do you think, when do you think federal legalization will actually happen?
I wish I had a crystal ball.
Yeah, I know.
and I could tell, because we'd be able to prepare a lot better. But like I said, I think it will happen sooner than people think. I'm out here and I've been in the industry for 6 years and I've seen how quickly it's happened in a lot of states. And then I have friends and family in Georgia who are like, it'll never happen here.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I think you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first got into the industry, I was kind of on the Georgia side of things. And then, in terms of like just how fast things would adopt from like a, destigmatization perspective. And then, I just had this thought that I was talking to a friend and he was saying how, one day your mom will have weed just sitting on her kitchen table, just like she has a bottle of red wine right now. And like that image to me, just, I don't know, it just made me a believer where that, at the end of the day, that is what will happen. And, and
I've seen it happen already. Like I have friends whose families are like staunchly conservative, and then they send me messages and they're like, you're never going to believe this, but my dad has been smoking pot.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And there's so many different like form factors and product categories coming out that make it more receptive to those older, more conservative generations, which I think helps the case a lot.
A ton.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing you were asking me about, like what big problems for the industry are.
Yeah.
Education has always been and continues to be a big problem. I hope that we'll start to see maybe some more regulations around what you can and can't say on your packaging about things. Because I feel like right now, if you don't know anything about cannabis and you go into a dispensary and there's hundreds of products and you're basing it all on the packaging, there's all these like buzzwords that people are using, but there's not a lot of consensus about what those words really mean.
Yeah.
And it makes it difficult for consumers to make educated choices.
Yeah. And, marketing has also been a, big question mark in the industry. There's just very limited channels. You can use normal Google or Facebook or online marketing as much as any other industry. How do you guys tackle that problem? Do you guys mostly do your education through, you mentioned like virtual videos, maybe billboards? I mean, that's just what I've seen the most common, but
we've done a little bit of the billboard stuff here and there. Instagram in the cannabis industry has always been a big one.
Yeah.
So we rely pretty heavily on that in terms of like getting the word out about where stuff is dropping, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Our website, we have like some stuff up on YouTube. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, cool. Well, I think we're coming up on time. Like, last question to close out is your success. You've been very successful in the cannabis industry so far, having come from a time when you didn't know what you're going to do graduating college. Do you think it's more from luck or hard work?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I kind of think of luck as like disorder. So you have bad luck sometimes and you have good luck sometimes, but that's all outside of your control. And so you have like this balance between the disorder, which is the luck, and then the order, which is what you actually can control.
Right. Yeah.
So I think they work together. Things are happening all the time that I can't
control.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that your best chance at being successful is to just try as hard as you can to solely focus on what you can.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for your time, Steph. This has been fun. Where can viewers find your products?
Everywhere. Go to our website. There's lots of educational info on there too, but there's a map where you can see our dispensary partners as well.
Awesome.